No, are you going to record?
I am, yes. Yes. So, all right. Well, it's the Easter season, so it's interesting that here we are for the first time for most of us celebrating Easter all apart from one another. It was interesting for us to not have all the usual trimmings that that go along with the season. And most of us know the Easter story. As a matter of fact, we were talking a little bit. I had a staff meeting this morning via FaceTime, so got to use something other than Zoom. And one of the things we were talking about is the fact that because it was different in some ways, it was fresher. That it really made us appreciate Easter in ways that we maybe haven't before. In the story we're going to do today, it is Resurrection morning, and there's there's two women, Mary Magdalene, and then it says the other Mary, and people have tried to gauge who that's going to be, and so it's probably not the mother of Jesus in this particular instance. But I do find it interesting that for most of our resurrection stories, it's the women who were there first. So way to go, ladies. And so there is an angel of the Lord, which is to be differentiated from the angel of the Lord. So something you can kind of look up yourself. If you remember the story, there were soldiers that were placed outside the tomb to guard the tomb because the Jewish religious leaders were afraid that the disciples would try to steal the body, and then things would be worse than it was before. Right? And I think that's about got it. So here is our story from God's Word. Now, on the right after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And whoa, there was a great earthquake because an angel of the Lord had come down from heaven, rolled away the stone from the tomb, and then sat on it. Well, their appearance was like lightning, and their clothes were as white as the snow. And the guards trembled at the sight of them and became like dead men. But the angel spoke and said to the women, "Don't be afraid, because I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. But he is not here, because he is risen, just like he said he was going to. Come and see the place where the Lord lay. And go quickly and tell his disciples that, that he is risen from the dead, and that you will see him in Galilee, because he has gone before you to Galilee." Now, see, I've told you. So the women went out quickly from the tomb, and they ran to bring word to the disciples. And as they were going to take the word to the disciples, behold, there was Jesus. He met them and he said, "Rejoice." Well, the women, they fell down and took hold of his feet, and they worshiped him. And Jesus said, don't be afraid, because I want you to go and tell my brothers to meet me in Galilee, and that they will see me there. And that is our story from God's Word. Now, this one's a little longer than some of the other ones that we have done. And so what I'd like for you to do is just turn to somebody next to you, or just try to tell, yourself as much as you can remember. Now, after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, just try to remember as much of the story as you can. And I'll give you just a few minutes to try to tell. And if you've got your mic on, you might want to mute it. So. All right. Well, I know you might not have gotten all the way through it, but I want to go ahead now, and you can, when you answer, don't forget to unmute your microphone, because that's always the dicey part of this, right? But I'm going to get you guys to help me retell the story. So now, after the Sabbath, what day of the week was it?
First day of the week.
Yeah, and what was happening?
The sun was rising.
Yeah, the sun was coming up. Mary Magdalene and who else?
The other Mary.
The other Mary.
The other Mary. What were they doing?
Walking to the tomb.
Yeah, they were going to see the tomb. And behold, what happened?
An
Earthquake.
Yeah, there was a great earthquake because what?
An angel
The
had
angel of the Lord was coming down.
Yeah, an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and did what?
And rolled away the
Moved the
stone
stone.
and sat on it.
the
He
stone.
rolled away the stone and sat on it. I love that he sat on it. And his appearance was like what?
Snow.
Lightning.
Lightning.
Like lightning, yes. And his clothes were were white as snow. Exactly right. And the guards went, "Whoa, this is so cool."
No, they were like, ah!
I think that's in the original Greek. Yeah, they trembled and did what?
Fell down like
Dead men.
Yeah, they became like dead men. But the angel spoke and said something to the women. What was the first thing he said?
Do not
Be
be
afraid.
afraid.
Right.
Yeah, don't be afraid, because I know that you're doing what?
looking for Jesus.
Yeah, you're coming to see Jesus, who was
Crucified.
crucified, exactly. But he's
Not here.
Not here.
because he's
Risen.
just like,
He said it.
yeah, just like he said he would. And then the angel said, "Come on and do
See,
what?"
He was laid.
Yeah, see the
Look
place
where he was
where the
laying.
Lord laid. And then go do something.
Tell his disciples.
Yeah, go quickly and tell his disciples that he has done what?
Risen.
Risen.
Yeah, that he has risen from the dead.
Just like he said he would.
He heard me.
Yeah, that was that was a little earlier. That he is risen from the dead, and that sure enough, he is going before you into where?
Galilee.
Galilee.
Yeah, into Galilee. And that what's going to happen when you go there?
You will see him.
Yeah, you're going to see him. And then he said, "Now look, I've told you." And so the women did what?
Ran.
Yeah, they went out quickly from the tomb and ran to tell the disciples, to give the disciples the word that had been given to them. And as they went to tell his disciples, what happened?
They were both joyous and afraid, weren't they?
Jesus appeared.
Yeah, they were. Jesus met them. They were filled with great fear and joy, great joy. Thank you, Andrew. They were filled with fear and great joy, and they ran to bring his disciples word. And as they were running to bring his disciples word, who met them?
Jesus.
Yeah, and what was the first thing he said? Don't be afraid.
Oh,
And so what did the women do? Oh, well, the first thing he said was rejoice. And then what did the women do?
They bowed down at his feet.
And they fell down to the ground, grabbed his feet, and did what?
Worshipped.
Worshipped him. And then Jesus said, don't be afraid. Very good, guys. And he said, go and
Tell my disciples to meet me.
My brothers.
yeah, my brothers. Go and
Right.
tell my brothers that I'm going before them to Galilee. And when they get there, what are they going to do?
They will
See
see.
me.
Yeah, they'll see me. Yeah, they will see me. Great job. Yeah, I would say give yourselves a hand, but I don't know if there's an emoji for that on this or not. So, give yourselves a high five, I guess. So, man, what do you guys think it might be like for those women? All right, so you've got two women who are going to this tomb. What do you think it might have been going on emotionally with them?
What's a tomb?
So, what do you think they might have been feeling?
Well, they're sad,
Okay, sad. All right.
confused. Why
Yeah,
is this all
confused.
happened?
It's not the way this was supposed to work out. I mean, what else could they be feeling?
It's not fair.
Oh, yeah. Man, this is wrong.
Tired. It's been an emotional few days.
Emotional few days, and it's early, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, the sun is just now coming up.
Hopeless.
Hopeless. Yeah.
Afraid if they think that if they're not sure if there's that soldier guard or not. I don't know if they know about that.
Yeah. Could have been an aspect of fear there. So, yeah. Well, let's look at the first part of the story. So, now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake because an angel of the Lord came from heaven, rolled away the stone, and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow, and the guards trembled because of him and became like dead men. So let's just stop. Right there. So, what do you learn about these women? There were, we know throughout the Bible, there were throughout the New Testament, the Gospels, there were a lot of disciples, right? But here we have two women. So what might you learn about these two women from the fact that they're coming this early to that? It says they came to see the tomb. Right? So curious. All right. What else?
Pay respects to the dead, I mean, like we put flowers on graves and whatnot. They probably had something similar they
Okay.
wanted to do.
All right.
They're also pretty devoted because you can put flowers down anytime. You don't have to do it at 4 a.m.
Yeah, in the early in the morning.
Yeah, that's true.
Isaac, you bring that up, and it makes me think they're pretty devoted, and yet the person they're devoted to is dead, as far as they know. right? So what might that tell us about their devotion?
It was real and not like trying to impress them. But I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. But
Okay.
not like they were trying to impress anyone.
Yeah, they're not getting extra credit, right?
No.
So, what about some of the rest of you? I haven't thought about that before. What might we learn about the fact they're devoted, even though the guy they're following is dead?
Do we have any? I mean, is there any thought that there was a little hope in their hearts of something?
And that's a great question, Amanda. And I mean, in the story, I don't know that we can say that, but I think obviously there is a possibility that was, that was the case. But in the story, we don't see that.
Okay.
But I wonder, what do some of the rest of you see? They're there early in the morning.
They were not afraid of, I'm sure they knew about some of the preparations like the seal and the guard. I mean, you kind of know when those things are happening in general, but they were still not afraid to go and show their respect to the recently deceased.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Cheryl?
Maybe they were still kind of, even though he was dead, like just the memory of him wanting to be there with him, and they couldn't be there on Saturday, that special Jewish day.
Yeah.
So if they could have, maybe they would have gone Saturday, but they couldn't. So then this is like as soon as they could go back and just, maybe they're going to mourn there. Maybe they're just going to stay there as close as they can to him because they loved him so much.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the realities of dead bodies, early in the morning may be better as well to go in the cool of the morning.
Yeah.
It may be practical.
And especially the Middle East is not a cold place. Well, Jerusalem is not a cold place typically. So there was a great earthquake. I think that might have been a nervous time for me to live in Jerusalem, right? Because this is the first earthquake we've talked about.
No.
Yeah. So kind of a lot of seismic activity. But we're given the reason for this earthquake because an angel of the Lord came down from heaven. I find that little tidbit really interesting. Might this tell us anything about heaven? I mean, honestly, to me, that was just something unusual, right? He came down from heaven. So does that give us anything about location?
Maybe.
You couldn't find the glasses?
Yeah.
It's up.
Okay. Yeah. I do just find that an interesting little tidbit. That we're told that the angel came down.
The fact of his coming down, was what caused the earthquake, apparently. Maybe God is drawing attention to what's about to happen through this earthquake. I mean, there's a very bright, shining angel. He comes down from heaven. He walks over to the rock. He moves the rock. He sits on top of it. He's shining. You can't really look at him too closely. There's some kind of testimony going on there that God is drawing attention to a detail that he's doing.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we are given some details here, right?
Considerable.
Let's talk about him rolling the stone away.
And sitting on it. Yeah.
And he caused an earthquake, okay, first of all. Then he rolled the stone away.
Yeah.
and then he sat on
Right.
it, which I just love. All right, because the guards are still there at this point, right?
Yes.
So what might we learn about this angel from his action, even before we talk about his appearance, but from his actions? What do you see?
Powerful.
Powerful, yeah. All right.
It's Papa.
Would that have some kind of symbolism to the job being done with him?
Wow, that's interesting, Susan. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that could have been, like I've done what I was sent here to do? So,
Wasn't the stone also sealed? Wouldn't they put a Roman seal on the stone saying "Do not disturb, order of Caesar"? Something like
yeah,
that.
thank you, Andrew. And that's something I might have brought up in the introduction. A seal was the Romans would nail like an iron bar into the stone and then bend it so that nobody could, it's almost like a lock, for lack of a better term. So yeah,
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
These could be bookend earthquakes.
okay.
So we have one when
Wow.
Christ dies, and one to signal his being raised, the announcement of him being raised from the dead.
Yeah, but because the resurrection obviously had happened a little earlier, that's a great point. Because he's not there.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me that the angel did not respect the seal or the Roman guards, and the fact of him sitting on the rock that was sealed. If I were to sit on a police car, that would be quite disrespectful. I think if the police pull up and I go ahead and sit on the trunk of their car, it just doesn't seem a very respectful thing happening.
Yeah.
So I think the angel is kind of giving a couple messages with the earthquake and with him sitting on the sealed rock, that you're not doing the right thing by having crucified the Son of God. You guys might have wanted to think about that again.
Yeah. What do some of the rest of you think?
It also seems kind of a challenge to me to say, like, if you're gonna want to put this rock back, you got to move me first.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Yeah.
That is really good. That's really good, Isaac.
Well,
He seems so patient and low key. Like,
okay.
yeah, I haven't come to do anything to the soldiers. That's not even part of my deal. But I'm just going to kind of sit here and wait for the ladies to show up. He just seems very chill.
Yeah, I mean, he had to roll the stone away so that Jesus could get out, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
So they could go in and look.
Oh.
It's like he had his specific orders, and so maybe he did that, and like he was thinking, okay, I gotta stay here and wait for these women. Although we don't really see the time exactly with the women coming and everything, but I mean, maybe he just sat there and was kind of like waiting. Well, I gotta finish my job, so I gotta wait for them.
Well,
They gotta come in and look.
yeah, I'd like to hear from some of the kids. I mean, so it says that Jesus was already gone. He rolled the stone away. So what do we learn about Jesus as far as getting out? If he didn't, what do you guys see?
I think I see that Jesus doesn't need someone else he doesn't need the stone rolled away. He can leave at his leisure. He doesn't need man to roll it away. Doesn't matter what you could lock him in a metal safe and like 10 feet thick, and he could just walk right through.
Wow.
I mean, he shows that when he walks into the room of the disciples after he's risen, when they lock the door. He shows that he has the ability, and no man's creation can stop him.
Amen.
So the angel didn't come to help Jesus, is what you're saying.
Well, no, I feel like he came to give the message to the women and to roll away the stone to prove it to them. But I don't think he did it for Jesus. Jesus could have done it himself.
All right. Lucy, you got any thoughts about that you want to share? You don't have to, but.
Not yet, Pop Pop, she said.
Okay, I don't want to put her on the spot. So, although apparently I did. So, all right. So we have this, and then it tells us about his appearance. That he's like lightning, and his clothes are as white as snow. That whole lightning thing. How bright is lightning?
Bright.
Blind.
So, yeah,
Blinded.
what do we learn about this creature by the description we're given?
To me, when I think of lightning, it's hard to look at lightning, especially if it's close up. It's blind.
Yeah, like hard to stare at it.
It's really bright. He's probably really bright, very big. And I mean, lightning is kind of silent.
Okay.
It seems like lightning would be silent. Although I don't see how that would fit in the description. Maybe he was quiet. I don't really know. But lightning seems to always come very quietly. It's the thunder that comes after.
Wow.
And lightning is also very quick, so maybe it was.
Yeah, he didn't want to create a lasting effect. Like maybe Jesus is the thunder.
Yeah.
Or something. He's the one really making an impact. Because lightning, you can see lightning in it. What is it, Luca? So thunder is what really, like, you can still hear it in your ears after it's gone, but lightning is less like after it's gone. Like you don't really remember it. And the angels didn't want to make that big of an impact. They wanted to point to the one who created them and the one they serve, which is God and Jesus. So I feel like the description of lightning also points to the fact that they were the servants, not the.
It wasn't about him.
Yeah.
You mentioned something I thought.
Yeah. Wait, quiet.
You mentioned that the angel was big. Anywhere in the story do we see the size of the angel?
No. Just that he can sit on the stone.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Visible.
that's something
Visible too.
we're just never told in Scripture about. Usually when I see comic books or cartoons about the Bible, these angels are these huge, ginormous creatures. And yet in Scripture, it doesn't seem like they're, much different than us as far as any kind of size goes. But the whole lightning and white as snow thing, that's a little different.
That feels like a reflection from God of his
Ooh.
glory.
Okay. Elaborate on that a little bit, Susan.
Just the white as snow, the Ancient of Days, and the lightning around the throne in Revelation.
Okay. All right.
Just
So other
draw
places kind of talk about some of those things. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about these guards. So the guards were terrified. As a matter of fact, does it seem like fear is a common theme of this angel's appearance?
Well, he does tell the women not to fear, and he tells the disciples not to fear as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like, well, the guards. I mean, these are Roman soldiers. So are those guys that you would think of normally as being kind of cowardly?
No.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But they shook in fear and then became basically catatonic. So not just that they passed out or they fainted, but it says they became like dead men. So what might we learn about this angel and his appearance from the way these guards responded?
May have been the beginning, the fear of the Lord might have been the beginning of some of their wisdom.
Oh,
They had a reason to fear because they didn't have a relationship with him.
yeah.
So they needed to gain that fear of the Lord. Respectful fear.
Yeah, that's good.
And they've never fought against anything like that.
Yeah.
They didn't know how,
Battles before, but
how were their weapons going to help with that. They didn't know how.
yeah. Well, let's look at the next part of the story.
Can I just?
The angel spoke and said to the. Oh, did you have something, Cheryl?
Yeah, I was just something about the angel, the women coming. When they came on that scene with the angel, besides the angel being so like awesome, I'm just thinking about they're seeing these guards laying there like dead as far as they know, I mean, they could be dead. So part of their fear could be like, what's he gonna do to us? He obviously killed these soldiers. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, well, let's look at that part of the story. So the angel spoke and said to the women, "Don't be afraid, because I know that you have come to see Jesus who was crucified, but he is not here because he is risen just as he said he would. Come and see the place where the Lord lay, and then go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and that he has gone before you into Galilee, and that you will meet him, you will see him there. Now, I've told you." And that's what I love that. I love that last part. So he starts off with "Don't be afraid." Cheryl, I love what you said there. That, I mean, they're seeing the same things that terrified the soldiers, but they're also seeing the soldiers.
The angel shut the lion's mouth.
Yes, the angels did shut the lion's mouth, didn't they? Didn't he? So yeah. Yeah, Lucy, did you have your hand up? Okay. All right. So
We'll get one in a minute, Papa.
oh, we'll be fine. We're fine. He says, "Don't be afraid, because I know that you're looking for Jesus, who was crucified." I find it interesting what he says there, that Jesus was crucified and he's risen just as he said. So what might we? I mean, did the angel know that Jesus had, he'd been telling the disciples, "Going to raise from the dead, going to raise from the dead, going to raise from the dead"? I mean, so might that tell us anything about the angel's understanding of what was, of the whole crucifixion, resurrection stuff? I mean, what do you see there?
I feel like he was sent as a messenger, so he would know whatever God sent him to say or know.
Okay. All right. What's the rest of you?
People in or heavenly beings may have been watching things on Earth, but we don't know.
Yeah.
I think we just know that he knew that Jesus said he was going to rise from the dead, and that this was his job to tell the ladies. He did what he said he was going to do. Like he normally does.
Had the disciples understood that message he had given them over and over and over again?
That appears to.
Yeah.
Maybe the angel knew, maybe because God told him, or maybe because he observed it, but maybe the angel knew that those women had also heard that, him say that.
Wow, that's I hadn't thought about that. That's a yeah. I can see where that's possible. Well, I find it interesting the way that he phrased this next statement. Come and see where the Lord laid. So, I mean, what might we learn about Jesus from the way this angel addresses, what the angel says about him to these women, the Lord?
It's his Lord too.
Oh, wow. So this powerful creature still considers Jesus his Lord.
I don't know. I wonder if the women had a better relationship with Jesus than the angel did.
Okay, in what respect, Andrew? What do you see there?
Well, the angel came to give a message. The women came to pay respect. And so, and they were willing, to go and see that he had risen from the dead. They were not afraid to go into the tomb, look and see that he wasn't there, and then go and tell the disciples that he had risen from the dead. They were filled with joy, and at that thought, it seems like the angel, although he was a servant of the Lord, may not have known the Lord as well as the women did. It just comes across that the women had this relationship with the Lord and wanted to continue that relationship even no matter what happened to him.
Nope.
What do some of the rest of you think about that?
Why did you make that point?
Well, because the angel has a very succinct, definitive message. And the women are very interested in finding out where the Lord is, I think. I don't know, it just came to me.
Yeah.
Do we see the women asking about where the Lord is or asking any questions about him?
No.
Do we see them saying anything in the presence of the angel?
No.
No. It's a better time to listen.
They're stunned.
Yeah, I don't think their day is going the way they thought it was going to go, right?
I think that's a really interesting point that Andrew made, that I think it's definitely clear that there's a different relationship between the angel and Jesus and the women and Jesus. And I think it kind of begs the question of, like, why is the angel here at all? Like, if the angel's not going to be taking the message to the disciples, he's giving them a message to take to the disciples. He's not doing it himself, which I assume he probably could. And he opened the tomb, which Jesus didn't need him to do. He's filling all of these roles that seem like maybe they don't necessarily need filling. If Jesus could have just went to the disciples, he did later. He met the women before they even got to the disciples again. It's a really interesting point about what is this relationship, and it just really, I don't know, it just makes God's glory is really shown in this angel who doesn't seem super necessary to the story in my mind.
Yeah.
I think he'll have a word for you later, this angel.
Yeah.
I
think I'll be terrified to hear it.
I think it's that part of he comes from heaven. He's making that connection clear. This is not just a Jesus and the women and Jesus and the disciples. Heaven is involved in this whole thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of like he's showing the victory over the stone. He's showing the victory over the soldiers. He's allowing it to be open so people can go in and look.
Yeah, I guess that's part of what I was kind of thinking too. Is it's just this extra dose of God's glory into the story that, if you look at it as a story, if you were, I don't know, if the story doesn't really need this dose of God's glory, but it gets it, and God says, "I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get glory in this story," even if you can't deny that they had an experience. These soldiers fell like they were dead men. The stone was rolled away.
Yeah.
I'm making sure that no one can deny this. There was an earthquake. There was,
Right,
everybody's gonna see and know about this moment.
right.
Yeah, and his message, getting to his message. So they're in Jerusalem right now, right? So that's we all know that. But tell his disciples to go to Galilee and that they'll see Jesus there. So hold on to that for just a minute. Well, let's get to the last section of the story. So the women went out quickly from the tomb, and they ran to bring the news to Jesus, and they were filled with fear and great joy. And as they went to tell the disciples, sure enough, Jesus met them and said, "Rejoice." And they fell to the ground, took hold of his feet, and worshiped him. And Jesus said, "Don't be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and that they will see me there." So let's, we'll stop there because that's the end of the story. But no place else to go. So the fact that they ran quickly from the tomb, and it says they had fear and great joy. That's an odd combination, right? So fear and great joy. Those two things don't seem to go together, right? So I wonder what we might learn. It says this being came from heaven, and they're given, and he gives these women a message, and they run from this being's presence with fear and great joy.
First of all, Jesus had been telling them all along that this was going to happen, and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
So it took reality from God, an angel coming down, him rolling the stone. I mean, it took that power that feared them so much, but they finally got it. He's alive. We're excited, even though the way they got it, it kind of terrified them, I think.
Yeah, now
Because
it's interesting because Jesus told his disciples, but I'm not sure how many times he told anybody else.
True.
you don't think they shared with each, I mean, I would just think maybe they shared it and they knew it. I don't know.
Well, because did it seem like the disciples got it at all?
I got a question for you, Butch.
Yeah,
Could the women have been part of his disciples also, besides just the 12?
Oh, yeah. I mean, no doubt they could have. Yes, but when it's something I need to research for my introduction next time. When it came to Jesus telling the disciples that he was going to go to Jerusalem, be killed, and raised the next dead, and raised after 3 days. I'm not sure that he did that with anybody else other than the 12.
That's interesting.
A good question.
That's a good research question.
Yeah.
He says in public, if you tear down this temple, I'll rebuild it in 3 days. So there is some even public.
Yeah. But I don't know how specific because I think there's only 4 times that he was very specific in his telling of of what was going to happen.
Would they not know the prophecy of the Old Testament, the prophesying of that? Haven't they learned that all the time? And knowing that he was the Messiah, would they not realize that as well? It's just a question.
Yeah, the Messiah dying is pretty vague in the Old Testament until the fulfillment in the New Testament. That's not what they expected. That's not what they were being taught. So it's there, but it's not what they were being taught.
You know, they recognized who Jesus was, ran towards him, grabbed his feet, and worshiped him. So they did recognize who he was.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point, Andrew. They recognized who he was. But after Jesus said rejoice, what was the first thing he said?
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
So he said rejoice. They ran to him. They took his feet. They worshiped him. But what's still going on?
They're still terrified.
Afraid.
They're afraid of Jesus, their homeboy, their best buddy, their friend, my pal.
I don't know that we know that they're afraid of him. They are afraid.
So they fall to the ground, take his feet, they worship him, and then the first thing Jesus says after that, don't be afraid.
Maybe it was sort of like a fear, like a trembling kind of fear, and maybe Jesus wanted to make sure they weren't going to have a heart attack or something before they got to the disciples, and he wanted them, calm down.
Don't die before you bring the message.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't, like, those soldiers were back there. We don't know that they aren't just like, I want to get away from the angel and the soldiers, and it's just, there's so much that's unknown for them about what is going on, that's kind of scary. It might be Jesus, but the worship is not necessarily touching something you're afraid of. That's not, grabbing a hold of something that frightens you. I don't know. Do you do that?
I think it's just the experience, this experience that they've had with this angel and this amazing news, and it's just like, they're probably just like trembling with just amazement.
Jesus had just died too. I mean, they had a brutal death. And he was just placed in the tomb with two men doing the ceremonies, and a big rock placed in front. Now this big rock is moved by an angel that frightened the snot out of him, I'm sure. Told him, don't be afraid, like they're really going to obey that. Look in here. Go ahead and look in there. He's not there. I'm telling you, go ahead and take a good look. And then go tell his disciples, and look, I've told you what I'm supposed to tell you. All of that alone is frightening. Okay? It's a very authoritative way of talking. Then they're running away. They're joyful. They're scared because of this traumatic experience. And then the guy that they were supposed to have seen in the tomb dead is alive. It's an overwhelming experience. So fear definitely would be one of the emotions, besides joy, confusion, dissonance for sure. So Jesus is saying, hey, get the message out. Tell my brothers. And it's interesting, he uses the term brothers, which I'm sure you'll bring up. Tell my brothers I'm alive and I'm going to see them in this place.
It also kind of makes me think of a quote from one of the Narnia books where one of the kids asks somebody if Aslan is safe. Aslan is the lion who is the metaphor for Jesus or whatever.
See? Of course he isn't safe.
But he's good. That's the follow-up to the question is, he's not safe. He's not safe. He's a lion. He's not safe, but he's good.
Yes.
So you can be afraid without being afraid for your life. You can be afraid without thinking something is dangerous, even though, I think that's one of the things that we see here is that Jesus is so powerful, and they recognize that. And how do you face someone with that kind of power and not realize that I am not powerful? If he wanted to, he could do anything. He could do anything that he wants. So that's scary, but he's good. And so we fall down and we worship. And Jesus says, you don't need this fear. even though it makes sense. You don't need it because I'm good and I love you.
Mhm.
I think it's a really beautiful sentence there. Is don't be afraid.
Mhm.
Or maybe,
What, you know,
they were afraid and joyous because they were afraid because they had never seen anyone rise from the dead before, and they're also really happy because he's alive again.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of both at the same time. Yeah. You know,
They were afraid. Maybe they were afraid because they didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And
You know and again, this is the first time I've done this story for a long time. In the Old Testament, do you know what it says about fear? It's the beginning of what?
Wisdom.
Yeah, the fear of God
Mm-hmm.
is the beginning of wisdom. I wonder here, it says they fell at his feet and worshiped him, and then Jesus' first thing he said was, "Don't be afraid." I wonder, do you see any connection between fear and worship?
Yep.
I mean, the last time they'd seen Jesus, he was weak and bleeding and suffering. And it's interesting. We see a great description of the angel. What do we not see here?
A description of Jesus.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think that like this whole scene didn't seem to take very long because it's quickly, they're going, they see the angel, he tells them what to do, they start running, they see Jesus and fall down, and he tells them to go, don't stay. So it all happens really quickly, but we have the opportunity to sit here and look back on it and really chew on it for a while and, try to think how that would happen. But if we put that in a small capsule of time, I think we can all probably put ourselves close to being in their shoes. So much going on that you have no time to process what's really just happened. When the last time they saw Jesus, his body was mangled on the cross.
Which makes me think, I mean, they've already gotten the message from an angel, right? The message, what was the message? Go and tell my disciples what?
To meet him in Galilee.
maybe it's
Okay,
written, he said.
Go tell my disciples. And now Jesus appears. And what's his message?
The same.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do find it interesting. Andrew brought up the fact that the angel calls them disciples, but Jesus calls them what?
Brothers.
Might that tell us anything about how Jesus looks at these guys? Who betrayed him? Who ran away, fled, booked, took off.
Yep.
Yeah, a brother could do that too.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a great point.
He had no hard feelings about it. He was forgiving,
Okay.
understanding,
No hard feeling.
loving.
Cheryl?
Maybe he used that term specifically so that when they went and gave the message, that would be something that would help the disciples not to be so ashamed,
Well, might we learn anything about this message from the fact it's repeated 2 different times?
It's important.
Important.
I think it would have been easy for me as one of these two Marys to go back to the disciples and say, I saw this angel and he looked like lightning and he told me to tell you something, but he looked like lightning.
Yeah.
I know it was important. I can't remember what it was.
I think that do not be afraid part is also sometimes when you get charged with doing something, this is a reminder that what he's asking them to do is not something super hard. Yes, it may be a little hard telling the disciples, maybe you're concerned about how they'll react, but they're not in control. They're not responsible for the disciples' response. They're just supposed to go and report this. And then I think it's comforting. We're not about to have a confrontation with the Jewish leaders and the Roman government again. We're going back to the backwater that we came from.
Yeah.
They're going to go back to Galilee, and that's a sign of this is where it started, and we're not just about to do something, probably not about to do something tumultuous right now. They don't know what's going to happen. Maybe Jesus is coming back and they're going to do the big military thing. They don't know at this point. But now the women know that the next thing is more of a baby step, right? Go back to Galilee.
Yeah.
Leave all this junk in Jerusalem. That's not your deal right now. The disciples are going to just go to little old backwater Galilee.
Nobody said don't be afraid of delivering.
Well, I'm curious because, I mean, what do we learn about these women? They see this angelic being, they run out of this tomb, and they hurry to go give the disciples the message. So what do we learn about the women from how they responded?
They were obedient
Okay.
and
Obedient.
excited.
They were extremely devoted to Christ.
Okay. How do you see that, Tucker?
What?
How do you see that? Elaborate on that a little bit.
So the fact that they immediately went and did what he told them to do, and did it as quick as they possibly could, I feel like shows that they were very devoted to him and knew he was in charge and thought of him that way.
Okay.
And so they were very devoted to him in the fact, and they're showing it by doing what he told them to do as fast as they can.
Yeah, so that whole sense of urgency shows us a little bit about their heart, right?
Right.
Well, I wonder today, does God still give his people commands? Does he still assign his people missions,
Of course he does.
tasks?
Yeah, I mean, he gives us a lot of tasks through the Bible, and he can do it through visions, dreams, etc. Not he doesn't do it that often as often as the giving commands through the Bible, but he can do it and does do it. So I feel like he definitely still does give us commands, tasks, things we need to do for him to show our devotion to help the spread of the gospel. There are many, many, many examples in the Bible. I would be here probably a week trying to list them all.
Yeah, you'd be by yourself, by the way. I'd be out of here. Well, in the story, we saw the women respond with quick obedience, and Tucker, I love what you said, that sense of urgency showed, their devotion to the Lord. I mean, today, do we still see that sense of urgency in God's people in obeying the missions that God gives us, the calling God gives us?
I mean, yeah, I feel like we still do see that urgency. Not a lot, because there are missions that include groups of people, like the church. So I feel like in the church and other groups of Christians, I feel like we do still see that urgency in God's people in obeying his commands.
Well,
so
what are some ways? What are some ways that, we might see that today?
Well, you can look at missionaries all over the world who are helping the spread of the gospel and telling people about Jesus even where it's dangerous and illegal.
Okay, all right. How about some of the rest of you?
Well, people willing to go to those drive-in church services, even though they know they might get tickets for them in the excess of $500. Not going to go into the constitutionality of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's been, among a lot of the Christians that I know in this recent thing, an urgency to help other people, that they want to help and they're like, wait, but I must do all these things at a distance. And so I've felt Christians having that tension of feeling like I'm called to love my neighbor, but it's a little tricky at this time. So I think that's a sense of people wanting to obey immediately a call. And yet I see plenty of apathy. People that are, I think in the screw tape letters, maybe, that there's this sort of thing of like, you know, one of the things you can do is if you can't get them to stop doing something, get them to just delay it. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're really good at saying why right now isn't a good time to do something, why it would be better, right? I'll just study some more, or I'm really busy with my kids right now, or my health's not great. I've got these reasons why now is really kind of not a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's
And
probably
there's
an
no angel to get me off my butt.
Was that you, Sissy?
Yeah, I think there's an urgency for the lost, especially I feel people maybe even start to feel that more now than ever with the COVID-19. You know, we need to tell our loved ones about Jesus because it could be too late. And I really feel like there's a big stir and urgency for the lost.
Yeah, I'm sensing that too. Yeah.
So you're saying God is working good even through this virus.
Always, always.
That might preach.
I love you, Tucker.
Thank you. I love myself too.
Well, guys, I've kept you a little longer than I intended to, but some good discussion on this story. On Wednesday, we're going to do what basically is the second part of this story. This is in Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. And so if you go and review this story a little bit, tell it to yourself out loud, because it does flow as a story. It's not super smooth, but it still does flow as story. But we're going to do the second part of this story on Wednesday, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. But any questions or comments before we cut out of here?
Thank you, Butch.
Thanks. Yeah.
And I'll try to have this posted later on today. If anybody, forgets something, wants to go back. Oh, I cannot imagine going back and listening to this long of a recording. But we do have a number of people that have listened. So I will schedule the next meeting probably sometime tomorrow, and I'll post it. I'll try to send it out to everybody on Facebook or on our prayer page for our home group thing. So, but anybody has questions or anything, just get in touch with me and let me know.
All righty.
Okay.
Thank you guys for
Bye.
participating.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.